Alright, so I'm making this video after the other ones, but I'm just going to kind of freehand all this. What is an integer? I think it's time to stop thinking about um, the beginning of the numbers being 0 and start thinking about 0 being the middle of the numbers. Well, that's a 3. Let's try that again. There we go. 4, 5, and then over here this would be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. These will go on forever in both directions. But 0 is this kind of middle number that separates the positives and the negatives. And all the numbers you see there, including the ones that you don't see, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so forth, are integers. We see these all the time. We see them in golf, in the game show Jeopardy, on graphic equalizers, on old stereos. The timeline in years, this would be like BC over here, and this, BC, and this would be AD, like where we are. So we do see negatives. Anytime you take a number and subtract a bigger one from it, you get a negative answer. So first, the concept that the book goes over is opposite. What is an opposite number? The opposite of something like 4 would be -4, and the opposite of -7 would be +7. The opposite of -13 would be +13, and you get the idea. The opposite just flips the sign. If you talk about 2, the opposite of 2 would be, the distance over here. So it would be -2. Right? So that's why that's called an opposite. Opposite. Then the book talks about absolute value. Absolute value. And the symbol for that is a straight up and down symbol. Like I'll just do the number 4. Okay? And so it's a straight up and down symbol on each side like that. And the absolute value of 4 is 4. Here's why. It's the distance from here back to 0. So the absolute value is always a positive distance from that number inside the bracket to the number 0. That's what absolute value means. So if I did, let me get rid of that. If I did the absolute value of -3, well, it would be like saying, okay, how many jumps is it from here back to 0? It would be 3 jumps, positive. And just like from 4 would be 4 jumps away, jumping being positive. So this would be +3. Anything you put in these absolute value symbols will be just the positive value of it. -6 would be 6, and -1 would be 1. The only time that you could ever have a value of an absolute value problem become negative is if the negative sign is out here. Let's say that's 8. And this right here literally means -1 times the absolute value of 8, which would be -1 times 8, which is -8, and that's because there is one negative sign. You need to check out the video on 2, 3. That's kind of why I made this one last, is the book gets us a little bit out of order. Even if it's like this, okay, this, again, translates into -1 times the absolute value of -4. Well, that's -1 times +4, which is still -4. And the rule I always tell people is if you have a negative, or let me do that in red. If you have an absolute value symbol if you have a negative sign outside of an absolute value symbol like this, the answer is going to be negative. Negative. So negative, even if it's positive inside like that, it's still -6. And the reason why, one more time, is it's -1 times the absolute value of 6, which is -1 times +6, which is -6. All right. And that's basically a very short definition of what an integer is, how to do opposites, and absolute values. Have a good one.